A dictator who controls a country of 50 million people. A CEO who runs a company worth more than some nations. And a cult leader operating out of a compound in the middle of nowhere. Three completely different worlds, three completely different levels of power. But if you sat each of them down and gave them a psychological evaluation, the results would be almost identical. That's not a metaphor. That's what the research actually shows. Today we're going to break down the psychology that connects dictators, CEOs, and cult leaders, the specific traits they share, the tactics they all use, and why these patterns keep repeating across history, across industries, and across cultures. By the end of this video, you'll be able to recognize this personality, whether it's running a country, a company, or a conversation. Let's start with the science. In psychology, there's a framework called the Dark Triad. It describes three personality traits that tend to cluster together in people who pursue power at any cost. Narcissism, an inflated sense of self-importance, a deep need to be admired, and the belief that you are fundamentally special, more special than the people around you. Machiavellianism, a cold, strategic approach to other people. Relationships aren't relationships, they're transactions. Every person in your life is either useful or in the way. And psychopathy, the ability to act without guilt, without empathy, and without the emotional friction that normally stops people from crossing lines. Now here's what makes this framework so powerful. Most people have traces of one of these traits. That's normal. But research consistently finds that people who score high in all three, narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy, are dramatically overrepresented in positions of extreme power. And that's not a coincidence. That's a selection effect. The first thing dictators, CEOs, and cult leaders share is the ability to distort reality. Not lie, that's too simple. They create an alternate version of reality and make the people around them live inside it. A dictator rewrites history. They control the media. They decide what the truth is, and anyone who disagrees isn't just wrong. They're an enemy of the state. A cult leader does the same thing, just on a smaller scale. They redefine language. They redefine morality. They isolate their followers from outside perspectives until the only version of reality that exists is the one the leader provides. And in a corporate environment, the same pattern shows up. Research from a 2025 systematic review of Dark Triad leadership found that leaders scoring high on these traits actively rebuild the moral architecture of their organizations. They redefine what's acceptable. They suppress dissent, not with violence, but with culture. And they surround themselves with people who won't push back. Different environments, the same psychological operation. I decide what is real. The second shared trait is maybe the most unsettling one. All three of these personality types are, by almost every account, extraordinarily charming. And I don't mean likable, I mean magnetic. This catches people off guard because we associate a lack of empathy with coldness. But research on corporate psychopathy, a study led by Paul Babiak and Robert Hare, two of the leading researchers in this field, found that psychopathy is actually positively linked to charisma and a leader's presentation style. Think about what that means. The same trait that allows someone to manipulate without guilt is the same trait that makes them phenomenal communicators. Cult leaders don't recruit people through threats. They recruit through warmth, through a feeling of unconditional acceptance. Psychologists call this love bombing, and it works because it targets a real human need. Former cult members almost always describe the same experience. At first, it felt like the family I'd always been searching for. The acceptance was immediate and unconditional. Dictators campaign on hope and belonging. CEOs hire with vision and inspiration. cult leaders welcome you with open arms. The warmth is real, the motive behind it is not. This leads directly to the third shared trait, and it connects to something we covered in our previous video on empathy. All three, dictators, CEOs, and cult leaders, score high in cognitive empathy, but low in affective empathy. That means they understand exactly how you're feeling. They can read a room better than anyone in it. They know what you need to hear, but they don't feel what you feel. They aren't moved by your suffering. They simply use the information. This is the engine behind every manipulation tactic they share. Gaslighting works because they understand your emotional reality well enough to undermine it. Love bombing works because they understand your unmet needs well enough to exploit them. Isolation works because they understand your attachments well enough to systematically remove them. A person who couldn't read emotions would be a terrible manipulator. A person who reads them perfectly but doesn't feel them is the most effective manipulator imaginable. And that's the profile across all three domains. Let's talk about how common this actually is. In the general population, roughly 1% of people meet the clinical threshold for psychopathy. But research by Paul Babiak, Robert Hare, and later confirmed by a team at the University of San Diego, found that among corporate senior leadership, that number jumps to approximately 12%. That's 12 times the base rate. And that's just the ones who display clinically significant traits. Some researchers, including Tomas Chamorro-Premuzic at Columbia University, put the figure even higher at around 20%. The data on political leaders is harder to quantify because you can't exactly hand a sitting head of state a personality assessment. But historical analyses of authoritarian leaders consistently find the same constellation of traits: grandiosity, absence of remorse, strategic use of cruelty, and a total unwillingness to accept accountability. The question isn't whether these people exist in positions of power. The question is why they keep ending up there. And the answer to that question is uncomfortable, because the systems we build reward exactly the traits that make these people dangerous. Think about what it takes to rise to the top of a political party, a corporation, or even a spiritual organization. You need to project absolute certainty in an uncertain world. You need to make decisions without hesitation, sometimes decisions that hurt people. You need to be willing to outmaneuver your rivals, and you need to inspire followers with a vision so compelling that they stop questioning the details. Those are leadership traits, but they're also, almost item for item, Dark Triad traits. Confidence becomes grandiosity, decisiveness becomes ruthlessness, strategic thinking becomes manipulation, and vision becomes a reality distortion field that nobody is allowed to challenge. The traits that help you get to the top and the traits that make you dangerous once you're there are often the same traits. That's the paradox, and most organizations, whether they're governments, companies, or communities, haven't solved it. Now let's get specific, because it's not just personality traits these three share, it's actual tactics. Number one, they all create an inner circle. Every dictator has loyalists. Every CEO has a trusted executive team. Every cult leader has senior members who enforce the rules. The inner circle gets privileges, access, the feeling of being chosen, and in exchange, they protect the leader from criticism. Number two, they all control information. Dictators censor the press. CEOs restrict internal communications. Cult leaders put members off from outside friends and family. Different methods, the same goal. If you only hear one version of events, that version becomes your reality. Number three, they all punish disloyalty more than incompetence. You can make mistakes in these systems. What you cannot do is disagree publicly. In a dictatorship, dissent means prison. In a corporation, it means termination. In a cult, it means shunning. The punishment changes, the principle doesn't. Number four, They all use a common enemy. Every one of these leadership structures depends on an external threat to justify internal control. We have enemies. They're trying to destroy us. Only I can protect you. And number 5, they all make leaving feel impossible. Dictators make it illegal. Cult leaders make it a betrayal. And in some corporate cultures, the identity you've built inside the organization becomes so total that walking away feels like losing yourself. Psychiatrists who study cult dynamics have noted that the manipulation techniques used by cult leaders are remarkably similar to those used by abusive partners. Love bombing, gaslighting, us versus them, thought-terminating cliches. The scale changes, the psychology doesn't.
So why does this matter if you're not living under a dictator, working for a psychopathic CEO, or inside a cult? Because these patterns don't only exist at the extremes. The same traits, the same tactics, they show up in families, in friendships, in workplaces, in relationships. A partner who rewrites history until you doubt your own memory, that's the same operation as state propaganda, just smaller. A boss who punishes disagreement and rewards loyalty over competence, that's the same structure as an authoritarian regime, just quieter. A friend who love bombs you and then isolates you from everyone else, that's coercive control, and it follows the same playbook. The scale is different. The psychology is identical. And when you understand the pattern at the macro level, you start recognizing it everywhere. Here's the takeaway. Power doesn't corrupt. That's the common phrase, but it's not quite right. What the research actually shows is that certain personality types are attracted to power, and the structures we build to distribute power often filter for exactly those people. The dictator, the CEO, and the cult leader didn't become what they are because of their position. They got to their position because of what they are. Understanding that distinction is how you stop being caught off guard, whether you're evaluating a leader, a boss, or someone in your personal life. If this video helped you see the pattern, you'll want to watch our breakdown of the Dark Triad next. That video explains the psychology behind these traits in detail, and the link is below. We've also covered narcissistic abuse, gaslighting, and the 7 signs someone has no empathy, all connected to this same research. If you found value in this, subscribe. It helps more people find this content. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.